Okay, everybody. I thought I would go over just a couple of little things since time got away from us with the shark in class, and just based off of some of the things I'm seeing, everybody's looking really, really good on their work so far. Um, what I am seeing a lot of are a lot of really thick fins, so make sure that you're tapering those things in, which you can see. I've got these down here really thin, and if that starts to kind of be something that you're struggling with, just kind of take into account, bouncing back and forth between Smooth Mesh Preview and Polygonal, and you can see how thin this was. And I did have to come in here and make some adjustments. So let me just turn my symmetry on. And I think my stuff was like way out here, and you can see how thick it is at the bottom. And in order to fix that, I just kind of move those in closer. And then when you think about the fall off of how these things are going to look, um, if you have, say, all your verts in a row on the front end like that, that's something that you can move to kind of make things a little more aerodynamic. You want to move that forward. Um, Little things, just cleaning things up in this view. And even though things are looking a little weird right here, it's okay. What I've got here is just a little bit of crossover, I think. So if I pull it apart, yeah, see, it's just crossing over into itself. That's all. And just untangle that. And those things will sort themselves out when they get smoothed. But I can play around with just these really fine details and just kind of try to make things a little easier on myself. Same thing here. Just trying to keep stuff. All right, so I'm going to come in here and check on my profile. And because I move things around, you might have to, after you do those types of things, maybe this is a little out here and you just have to kind of come back in with your side view and just pull these things just a little closer to where they need to be. So that's one thing. Also, I thought I would show you guys if you end up where, let's say you forget that you're not in symmetry, and you start doing a bunch of stuff over here. So let's say, like, for instance, I forget, I'm not in symmetry anymore, and these lines are just a little too close, kind of like what we talked about in class. And let's say I do some things here, like, I move this down to kind of spread those lines out a little bit so that they're a little more even, same distance around. Now things do get closer. When you get towards the head, you'll have more geometry, and you'll have more as you come down here around the fins. Let's say that I'm just doing all this work. I'm dropping edge loops in here and, sliding things around. And suddenly I realize, crap balls, I have been working on one side this whole time and have completely forgotten about the other side, which is now different. Like no edge loop here, got one over here. The importance of staying symmetrical is very important, but all is not lost if you find this thing's just all kinds of crazy. Um, as long as you have a center line, and I think this is very important, I've said it in class, you need to have a center line so that you can mirror this over if you get into a tight spot. So I made changes over here, and I made changes on the fin. So if I keep everything centered, let's go to my front view, and I'm just going to, let's just Shift I isolate my shark here. Here's a happy guy. Needs to be a little happier, I think. You can see that everything is perfectly zeroed here. I have not moved over here in my translate. I have not moved this shape since I started working on it. I do have all this history. I'll just go ahead and delete that and make sure my pivot is centered. You saw how it jumped up. It still had the pivot from that little cube that we started with. So let's say this side is the side I want to keep, and this side is the one where I didn't make any changes. Remember, the edge loop here, it's not there, and I changed some topology just slightly. I can delete half of this and mirror the other half over, but there's some things that we need to watch out for, so let me walk you through that real quick. So center the pivot. You have to be on the center line, so if you've moved this around, or if everything is really, really way out of whack, you'll see what I mean. You're going to have to take some extra care. But let's say I want to keep this half, so I'm going to delete this half. So let me just marquee select everything right up to the center line. And just to make sure I've got everything, I'm going to kind of peruse. See, I missed a face right here. It's pretty tight there, so it's all right. And there. So I have half of this shark selected. And just, first time you do these types of things, this is one of those self-destruct button moments, right? But I'm going to give you a step-by-step. So I'm just going to delete these faces. Boom. Half that shark gone. Kind of interesting. Very, very cool. So that's the first thing you need to do. Just delete everything, but try not to mess with this center line. You're going to want to make sure that this is all good. And maybe you're saying, yeah, Dave, well, I kind of really jacked mine up, and I've got an edge over here, and I've got this edge like that, and my tail is all weird. Let me grab these verts and just kind of shove them over and rotate it around. Everything's a wreck, and because we just got away from ourselves. As long as you have half of this shark, we can still recover this. So what I would encourage you to do is grab this edge, that whole outside edge, and remember our trick right here. Just grab this axis control arm for your scaling tool and just slide it into the center point. Now, we're in a little bit of a pickle here though, right? We're folding over ourselves, but that's okay. I'm centered on this line. Everything is centered on it because I've made sure of it by sliding this into itself. Everything is perfectly flush. All those vertices and edge loops are in a row. So I need to move it over, right? But in order to do that, I need to make sure I don't have any crossover. So let's go to the front, and I'm just going to hold X, and I'm going to snap it to the center line right there. But we still have this lobe back here, okay? So let's go ahead and just take care of that. Too easy. We'll just grab some vertices. Look, there's all the ones. I know my edge is snapped to that center 0, 0, but this just needs to kind of slide out. So it's not inside out, F to frame. You can frame a vert. And I think that's going to be okay. So let's just take another look. Front view seems okay. There's all my straight lines right there. Let's just double check. Everything's right there. Okay. So I'm just going to come over here. My center point is on the line. Everything is looking good. Now I just need to mirror this over. Now mirror is, the way I get to it is I hold down shift and right click, and mirror is right there. And because I use these marking menus so much, I kind of forget where these things are sometimes. So let me just come up here. There it is, under Mesh, Mirror. And if you go to the options, you'll see all this stuff. And don't worry, just keep everything the way it is here. But I almost never go into these options because this tool is really efficient. If I go Shift, right click, and just go to Mirror without going to the options, you see this pops up. And it has everything that the settings box does in the initial selection. So you can see that this mirrored right over. Some things to note. My shark, the half I kept, was on the positive side of X. So X is running horizontally here. This side is positive. This side is negative. And I mirrored in a negative direction. If I wanted to change that, I could select direction and middle click and drag on the viewport and see positive. You can't mirror it into itself. So right now it's like, what are you doing? Okay, I'll do my best. How about nothing, but we want it to go in the negative direction. So slide that in the negative direction. You can see here we can also change what axis we want to. So maybe if you set your references up in just kind of a gnarly way, and you're like, Dave, I'm doing the best I can. I got pictures on the screen. I'm working off of them. I don't know if it's front, side, left, or right. That's okay. I used to do the same thing. You just look down here and figure out which axis are you mirroring on. If this is Z, then you just come here, select axis, middle click and drag in the viewport, and slide down to Z, right? And then it will mirror over the Z. You can see the Y. Look, it's mirrored over the Y, right? Because the Y is running vertically, and it's mirroring from the positive to the negative here, top to bottom. And these things can be a little weird to get straight in your head, but not to worry, everything will be fine. So that's step one, getting everything mirrored, making sure you're mirroring the right axis in the right direction. Just these two things, that's all you need to worry about. Border, merge border, you can see there are some options here. Merge border, do not, bridge border, things like that. Merge border is the default, and I'm gonna keep it there. So if we come around here and look at the whole shark, sometimes when you mirror, not every time, but many times, one or two of the verts just won't merge right, and you'll end up with a hole. So I like to double check everything every time I mirror. So I'm just going to hit W as an easy way to exit that mirroring tool, and I'm going to go over to vertex. So if you'll see here, if I'm in the polygonal view, that my center line is now a hard edge, and I can fix that later. It's not really doing anything bad right now, so I'm just going to leave it. But you can see all my verts. If I smooth mesh preview, that really will expose verts that are just kind of floating. And what you'll see is, actually, usually I'm always hoping there isn't one, but right now I'm hoping there is, just for demonstration purposes. What I'll do is I'll just kind of travel along the entire center line of the model, and I'll do it in smooth mesh preview, because if you do have a vert that's out of place, you will see it in smooth mesh preview. So I'm just kind of cruising along, and let's see here, cruising along, checking out, making sure no floaters, looking good. Okay, so I didn't find one that time, but a lot of times what you will find is maybe you'll find you'll find a vert like this just hanging out by itself, and you can see even just adding that, it causes a problem. It bends the mesh, it's pulling right there, so you just want to have that deleted. Sometimes you'll find one that you can't delete, and in that case you just need to merge it or use the target weld tool to just target weld it into something else. Just to show you what that looks like, if I just pop a vert right there, all right, that's a problem. That's going to cause problems for textures and everything. So I could just go to target weld here, and here I can weld from target, or I can weld to center, which means if I go to target and I drag this here, it will merge with that one, right? Control Z back. If I choose center, it's going to split the difference between these two. So again, if I come here, you can see that green dot in the middle, it'll merge it to the middle. And that may or may not be what you want. So I'll just Control Z back. But in this case, I'm exiting that target weld tool. I just need this to go away, so I'm just going to delete it. And so that's the last thing you need to remember. Now, there are more steps if you're mirroring a whole object over. So say you have an eyeball over here. There's a couple of ways to get it over exactly, but if you decide to mirror, there's another step. So since I'm showing the mirror tool, I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate that. Let's say I'm just going to use V to snap it to a vert in here and position my eyeball, scale it up, frame it. I have not worked on this socket yet, so it's not going to be right, but let's just say I'm starting to kind of get my eyeball in there and just kind of flatten it out a little bit. Right, so I've changed this eyeball a whole bunch and I want to mirror it over. So the steps are the same, but there's a couple more. So just bear with me here, all right? So I've got this sphere. One thing I can do, if I don't need it to be mirrored in its orientation, like rotation, I can just simply come over here on the channel box layer editor and on translate X for me, because I'm translating across the X-axis here from positive to negative X. Over here, I'm on the positive side. This eye is on the positive side. I need it to go over here exactly. So if I just put a minus in front of the 7, minus, and hit, well, first I need to duplicate the object, right? So let me just grab this sphere and I'll just say Control D. So here I've got this other one that's on top of that. Now I just come up here for that duplicate I've made and put a minus in front of that 7, hit enter, and voila, it's perfectly right over here in this other socket. Now if I do that, and let's say this thing is kind of, rotated like that, you'll see why mirroring it is kind of a better idea, because if I Control D it now, I'm only duplicating the translation over X, but not the rotation that I made. So if I wanted to get that rotation, just put this back to normal. If I wanted to get this exactly in its rotation, maybe, let's say I do need to kind of rotate it a little bit more like that. Right? So now we can see, looking down, this axis of this shape is now pointed towards the nose, and I need this one to point towards it. So moving it in translate X is only going to duplicate it that way. I need to duplicate that rotation as well, and in this case, mirroring is the easiest thing to do. So I'm going to take this shape, and just like the whole body, I'm going to come down here to mirror. I'm mirroring to the negative side of X on the X axis, and there I have it right there. But we're not done, because these are two different shapes, and when you do that, Maya automatically combines what you mirror into one object. You can see here I have P sphere 1, but that's both of them, and the center point is on the original. So I can move them, but only by moving that one. They're just locked together. So that's no problem. Let me just separate them. So shift, right click, go to separate. And now you can see one is white, one is green, because the last selection is always green, I believe. Yeah. So I've got these, but now they're in a group. Polysurface 1 and 2, both of those eyeballs are here, but they're in this group, and I may or may not need that. Maya will always, after you separate something, it will put it in a group. So I'm just going to, it lives under edit. This is spacebar marking menu. I'm just going up to edit, and I'm going to go here to ungroup with that group selected. Now you can see that is no longer grouped, but I still have the transform from that group. And I need to get rid of that. I want these to have their own individual transforms while I work. There is an advantage, there can be an advantage to keeping it this way, and there are settings you can change. I find it's just easier to do this as often as it comes up rather than mess with settings, and that's one of those things that it's just going to, you'll change a setting for convenience, and the next project it's a pain in the butt. So I just try to work through it. So to get rid of that transform, we've ungrouped. Now we need to delete the history. So we'll just delete that history, and the transform is gone. And now we need to center our pivots. Boom. So I have both of these now. You can see the pivot is centered on both of them. And that's how you mirror an object. One last thing. Well, two last things. Let me just while I was over here, I saw how thick this fin was. This is very common. So I'm just going to grab some verts in this case, and I'm not using symmetry. I'm just going to squeeze them together a little bit. And just get that a little thinner. I could even go some more probably, but you'll see, especially towards the trailing edge, you don't want to have big Gumby fins, right? And even here, this is, eventually I'm gonna just need more topology, but I think what I can do is I can maybe pull those in. I have to frame that vert just to kind of keep me centered on it. These can be much tighter. Now I still have to extrude that one funky little fin off the back there. So let me just move this down. Let me try and do that real quick. I'll just grab these faces. I probably should add another edge loop here though. Now this is going to make things a little tight, but let's just see what happens. So I'll have to play around with those verts. But now I can extrude these. Whoops. Just flatten that out a little bit, and I'll extrude those out. And then I can kind of mess around with the topology here. Maybe I'll have to pull those out a little bit more. People are about to walk in the door here. Sorry about that. So we can just pull these things out now. And I'm just playing around with it. I'll probably have to add some more things in here, like another edge loop right here, in which case I'll probably move this up. So just Control Shift to slide it up. And same thing with this one, just Control Shift a little bit. And I'll grab this vertex and just kind of play around with that. And yeah, I'll just have to add another. I'll just add it there. It's already getting me kind of what I want. So even doing all this work, right, have to take into consideration that I'll be probably wandering off of my reference, so I should check that, right? And picture isn't there because I had isolated everything with Shift I, so just deselect everything and then Shift I again. That'll bring my image back. And there you see. Now remember, this is a low res photo I'm working off of, so I'm not too upset that things are a little different, but I am going to just do my best to change stuff. Bring that down. I need to bring all of this forward like that. Okay. Maybe bring this in. I'll just bounce out here. You can see it starts to get a little crazy. Bring that in. So that's okay. Something like that. And then these can just go a little lower. Maybe stretch out just like that a little bit. And I'll just take that as interpolation, right? We're artists. At the end of the day, we are our own bosses and we are in charge of making decisions for ourselves. So I'm just cleaning these things up a little bit, and I can see how that is helping. Maybe these do rise up a little bit more in the middle, and that will help with the form. Okay, so something like that. Turn off X-ray there. and it's looking better. I do think that this is a little too thick. I can just tighten that up. Same with this one. Just keeping track of things in the back here. But yeah, it's looking good. I can always just deselect those and just make these a little thinner. Same with these. There we go. Okay. So that fin's looking pretty good now. And I can come back over here and I can play around with these side fins in the same way. One last thing, just to try and keep this video on the shorter side. Now I remember I was having, the mouth here. I was just kind of like, you know what? I think I can do a better job. I've got some unnecessary geometry on the roof of the mouth, but I do like these lips right here. And this is the key. You want to have this around the mouth, and that goes for the mouth of anything. Any kind of opening like that. You can see we have the same thing going on around our eye, and but we definitely need that around the mouth. And I'd like to have one on the inside too. So what I could do, this is another self-destruct button. I'm just going to come in here at the back of the throat, and holding shift and the greater than symbol on the keyboard, I'm going to select everything, now less than, just right up to that last edge loop. And I'm going to do something just crazy and just delete it. Alright, I can always just extrude from here. So I'm going to bounce out of Smooth Mesh Preview, and remember I'm changing this from object to world, and I'm just going to bring this back like that. You can see now I've got that lip topology there, and I could play around with how offset is, right? And I'm just going to keep hitting G and just keep going straight back. And I'm going to check in polygonal view again. And basically that can be kind of like where the teeth are going to be, I think, just right around there. So now I'm going to extrude again. This time I'm going to run thickness, not that way, but this way, to create kind of an inside, if you will, to the mouth. Just going to pull that back a little bit, but I want it to go up and here down. So basically I'm going to start creating the inside of the mouth here. So let me just G to repeat that last command. Thickness, see how that's not really going to work, so I'm just going to switch this to world, and let's just run it back. Okay. Again, I can widen that up to create a cavernous mouth, and now I can start to kind of just flatten these things up just a little bit. Same thing, G to the world, pull that back. So now I've created that back area, and just to turn on X-ray here, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the scaling tool and just straighten these up. Now I can see what I'm working with here. Pull this, make sure this is pulled past it. Oops, wrong way. Make sure I got the right axis here. Pull it back so it's not overlapping those. Alright, so everything's right there, and now I'm going to hit G again to extrude. I'm just going to pull it back, and I'm going to run this offset, so just tighten that up. Alright, and the whole thing I'm going to start to kind of close this way. Now, I can leave this open. I don't have to, I could just, like, for example, rotate this around and hide this hole, extruding another thing just kind of straight, oops, straight down, so you can't see the back, right? And that's what I get, so I just pull that down a little bit more. So now we can't see the back of the mouth, and that's much better topology. I can work with that. Or we could seal it up, right? We could. So I can just bounce out a smooth mesh preview, and I'll hide that grid just to get it out of the way. So here I have this whole thing selected. Let me just fill hole. Here we go. I'm not done. I've got to, this here is a many-sided face, right? And we want quads, so a multi-cut top to bottom, and then multi-cut side to side. And just like everything else, I just want clean topology, right? And I can just pull that way. Either one of those is fine. But that's the mouth, and then I can come in here and play around with, you know, how I want the inside of this mouth to be. Maybe I want to kind of pull that up so it does hide the back of the throat a little bit more, and I can bounce out and just go here. Now I want to go into symmetry, have both of those, just spread those out a little bit more. And I'm looking at where am I going to put these teeth, right? I like the idea of this being maybe beveled. Let's just see. I'll run a bevel on that. Run the fraction in a little bit. Maybe add a segment. Let's just see. And that kind of makes it a little bit more. I don't really think I need that. Basically just added another edge loop, or split that one into two. And I'm still in symmetry, so I can pull that up. And now I can start playing around with this for teeth and gums, you know. The lip retracts around the gum, so I don't want to get too crazy. I might want to make a separate object, and I can duplicate these faces to make it. But I'll save that for another video. So for now, I'm at least set my mouth up here where I have more control, and I've got this outer loop for the outside of the mouth, and then I've got this one now for right there on the kind of peak of the lip, and then I've got this one going on the inside. All these concentric rings, this flow of topology. That's what we're after right there, all the way back. And we're getting to where we need to be. So I hope that helps. That's just some basic stuff, some things that might help you. Again, building up the history here. I'm going to delete that, center my pivot, and save, because bad things happen to good people. So I hope your project is going well. Everything looks good so far. But make something you're proud of, and can't wait to see what you guys all have. Thanks.